Hi everyone, welcome back to Falcon's House. Today we are covering Westworld Season 3, Episode 4. We are halfway through the season now, and it's starting to pick up. The episode opens with William yelling drunk about how he knows who he is and shooting a gun into a mirror. Then blood drips on him and his wife's drowning scene happens, and he sees a dead Emily, and she confronts him about shooting her and tries to convince him he isn't real. He wakes up from the dream, and Hale walks up, and he tries to shoot her, but she stops him, and she tells him about Serac trying to take over Delos, supposedly for the data in Section 16, which is where he was trying to recreate real people. He blames her for letting it happen because she was in charge, and then she needs his votes for the privatization like she wants, and she asks him to come back to the real world with him instead of this isolation that he's in and run Delos. We get a flashback with Dolores and Bernard and her waking him up after rebuilding him and kind of her vision for the future, I guess. Bernard is in a small Georgia town with a spaceport in the background, which I thought was pretty cool. It kind of shows how far the future has come. We have these vertical landing and takeoff rockets, even in like a smaller town, so it means it's probably fairly ubiquitous around the world at this point. Him and Stubbs are talking, and Stubbs is going through a tablet, and there's a picture of Serac with Liam. So it makes it seem like Serac is a real person, and I had some question about this, but I think at this point in this episode, it's starting to look like Serac is real and not just Rehoboam, but he does definitely have a high level of control there. Dolores and Caleb are also doing the kind of the same thing as they're looking into Liam that Dolores had dated, and he was the CEO of Insight, and Bernard wants him, and now Dolores and Caleb want him, but she has her other host that she's turned into, like, that his head of security, and he's convinced Liam to give him his access code so that he can make some fund transfers. And so Dolores then knocks out this guy working from a private equity company, and then they have this way of like stealing some of his blood and injecting it into Caleb, and then it converts it so that Caleb shows up as him effectively. Like they use some sort of blood system for identity verification. Maeve is in Singapore with Serac, who woke her back up, and he says he grew up in Paris and then wishes he could show her, but that he's unable to. And then he has some memories being shown of Paris being destroyed by a nuclear weapon, which we're not supposed to be that far in the future, I don't think, so it's kind of strange that we've had some major war where Paris gets nuked, but who knows. And he says that his goal since then has been to try to protect humanity from itself, and that's why he has Rehoboam, and why he wants the data from Delos about all the part guests, because it'll allow him to better understand these people and be able to predict more accurately. And so then he says that Dolores has created some sort of disruption in the simulation that he's been running, that it's a disturbance in the predicted plan, and that he needs her to help him stop Dolores. And he says that the hosts are not going to survive that, and humanity will survive, but that he can send Maeve to the Valley Beyond, and they can have their own separate world where everything is happy for them. He said that the first divergence in the future that he had been planning was at Arnold's house, which is where Dolores had gone after she came to the real world, and so he takes Maeve there, and it shows that 5 hosts have been built. So it's her, Bernard, Hale, the Insight CEO, head of security, and who is that other host? We find out later in the episode that it is Musashi, and so he's also been doing stuff in the Triad criminal underworld. So then, in that house that Soraka's already been to, they've been torturing some guy for information about the 5 identities he created for Dolores. And he says that he went to somebody called the Mortician, and that she was the one that would know the information that was necessary, and that he didn't really know anything more than that. So then Soraka shoots him, which helps confirm that he's real in that, so because he's able to physically interact with the world. And then he once again tries to get Maeve's help and says that he has a button that allows him to shut her down if she doesn't agree to help. So, of course, she agrees to help because she doesn't really have much of a choice at that point. So, William is shaving, and Hale shows up and helps him shave and tells him that they need to find the mole. And he agrees to that, but he's like, well, what if you're the mole because you've been alive this whole time when everybody else got killed? And she kind of dismisses it, but obviously she knows now, and that the real Hale was the mole and was the one trying to sell all the data. Dolores brings Caleb, who has the blood marker that identifies him as the guy they knocked out. And they go to the bank, and he does his scan for the blood, and it says that he is his other guy, so they get access to the accounts for the Insight CEO. You would think, though, that if they had a way of faking this blood thing, you'd ask for a secondary form of identification, like a photo ID or something to show that, hey, I really am this person. Like, I mean, that can be fake too, but you'd think you'd have more than one identification method if there's a way of faking it. So then they ask to do the transfer of all the money to them, and so they're in control effectively, and then he'll become poor. And if it doesn't work, Dolores is just going to kill everybody, and Caleb doesn't really want that to happen, I don't think. So it doesn't work the first time, but the second time he tries it, it works, because they had to do a second reading to do the transfer, and everything goes smoothly, and they're able to just leave. So Maeve is walking around, and everywhere she goes, there's a little bit of like electronics get screwed up, like there's like some static or things like that. Like she's emanating her power or whatever you'd want to call it to do this. So it's kind of interesting to see how that kind of works. And eventually she tries to get to where she could actually meet the Mortician, and the guards try to stop her. And so she fights one off, and he has a gun in his waistband, and she just grabs his gun and shoots him in the dick. She then goes, and then he goes in to meet the Mortician to try to fix him to get repaired or healed or whatever. And she follows her in and is like asking questions about everything, and another guard tries to stop her and she shoots him. And then the Mortician tells her the fake name of Lara that she used, so that, and she gave her enough blood so that she could fake that identity. Liam is at a party, and he thinks Dolores is dead, and that Liam's friend gives him drugs and tries to get him a legal hooker, but he kind of refuses that, and then he doesn't want one. And then Dolores and Caleb show up at the same party, and then Liam tries to hire a hooker, and he finds out that he's poor because they kept declining his transaction. And then when he walks off, he gets intercepted by Bernard and Stubbs, who are also at that party trying to get him. And Bernard assumes that Dolores has replaced Liam with a host, and tries to turn him off with an override, and it doesn't work. And he then realizes that he's still human, and then tries to just lead him to safety. But the head of security for Insight warns Dolores, and so she approaches them and tries to shoot him. But Bernard and Liam run off, and Stubbs goes to fight her, and he tells her that Bernard changed his programming to help him, otherwise he would have stayed on the island and he wouldn't have been out here in the real world helping Bernard. They then have a fist fight, host versus host, which was pretty intense, and I think the music in the scene was really amazing. And then she ends up beating him and knocking him over like the railing, and starts going downstairs, and Liam sort of realizes that she was Laura who was there, who they all thought was dead. So there's definitely, everybody realized something weird's going on. Maeve gets taken to the triads to find out about the bodies that Dolores had tried to move, because she didn't ask for multiple identities, she only asked for one identity, and then 4 other bodies or 5 other bodies to be moved, and for all these other people, and that she'd already created. And then so these people, the guards try to stop her there, but Maeve finds out they have all these auto-aim guns, and she has the ability to control how those work, because she can control all electronics, and she just reprograms to shoot each other, and so then they all basically take each other out, except for one guy who tries to stab her, but she fights him off. William is ready to go back to the real world and with Hale, and so after she walks out, he has a chat with his ghost Emily again, who confronts him about killing her. She says she will be waiting for him, and I'm starting to think that it's not just him that isn't real, or Sirach isn't real, it's the whole season. Everything going on isn't real. It's all inside of Rehoboam. It's all a simulation. And I think that gives the best explanation for what's going on and why things don't seem to be lining up, and it's a kind of plot twist that this show would use. Maeve kills another guard with a sword, and then they have a kind of a little bit of a fight as the guy she tries to stop his autogun, and he resists that, and then she grabs the sword and stabs him. This episode has been very action heavy. We've jumped around a lot between all the characters. It's been pretty intense. And she cuts open a barrel, and the white liquid that looks like what hosts are made of pours out. And then she gets met by the head of the triad, who is Musashi from Shogun World, and then he shoots the mortician and starts explaining things. Caleb catches up to Bernard to take Liam, and Bernard asks him if he is helping Dolores, and if he is one of us, but Caleb doesn't know she is a host and is just confused. Liam's head of security shows up and tells Liam to run, and that Caleb to go after them, and then shows that he knows who Bernard is, and that Bernard now knows that he's a host. Musashi seems to think that Maeve left them all to die because of Dolores' reprogramming, and she asks if he is Teddy. Bernard asks him if he is Teddy. Excuse me. And then he realizes that no, that's not true, and then so who is he really? Hale confronts William about talking to Ghost Emily, saying they've been monitoring him. And she says something about being his oldest friend. And then William figures out that Hale is actually Dolores. And Callahan, the head of security, asks Bernard if he recognizes his oldest friend. And then Bernard realizes that it's also Dolores. And then it's revealed that they're all Dolores, and she just made copies of herself. Which I think makes the scene with Hale cutting herself and Dolores in the last episode even weirder, because they're both Dolores, it's just different versions of Dolores, and one version seems to not like the other version, or not like being in her own body. It's kind of strange. So And then Musashi says, if you want something done right, do it yourself. So Dolores didn't trust the other program, probably after Teddy kind of rebelled about not wanting to help her in the last season about how to do things, that if she all was her, they'd all just follow orders correctly and do whatever was necessary to make it work. Musashi and Maeve fight, but he wins and she gets stabbed and is bleeding out in the pool of the white liquid, which might mean that she's gonna survive. I mean, she's gonna survive this, but that's probably part of why she's able to survive it. William tries to attack Hale, but security stops him, and then he keeps saying they work for him, and then she tells him that he's sick and that he's been imagining all these things, and then he yells at her that she's not real and that she's a host. And then we find out that this was actually, she was never sending him back to the real world. She was sending him to a mental health hospital and not back to Delos. And this way she can just claim that he is mentally incompetent and that she can gain control of the shares for herself, so that way she can vote the company to go private just like she wanted. But he knows about Dolores' plan now, but she can't really do anything. She pricks him in the neck with something and knocks him out. Caleb catches Liam, and then Dolores approaches and Liam realizes that Dolores is still alive. And then Sirach's men go to where Maeve is, and Musashi has to escape before he can cut off Maeve's head, control unit out of her head, so she still has a chance to be repaired. So that I assume that's what's going to happen. William is now in a mental hospital, and he sees Dolores in her farmer's outfit, and she tells him that it was Emily's last wish, and that he's found the center of his maze, but that the maze is about understanding, and he still doesn't know who he is. He asks if he is me, and she says, "Welcome to the end of the game," and it then zooms out and there's nobody else in the room with him, like he's all imagining this, so he's totally, like, it's all in his head. He's had a breakdown effectively about who he is and how everything's going to work. I still don't think we've seen the end of him. Like, there's going to be some sort of redemption arc probably, but it's kind of interesting to see how that's turning out. This was a very intense episode, and I am not sure that I did it justice for explaining how everything is, and I'm not sure I have too many clips to show how to make this, to smooth it all out, but we'll see. Thanks for watching. Please like and subscribe. I have my 100 subscriber contest coming up as soon as I hit that, so subscribing does help for getting to that number and starting that contest.